Hey, this is Jordan from Jersey, and this is what I thought of the comics I read the week of January 6th, 2010. That's right, the first comics of the year and the decade, and they're kind of disappointing. Not terrible, but not nearly as good as the last comics of last year and the last decade. So let's start off with the bad. Deadpool Team Up, issue 897, and also the last issue I will be picking up. Deadpool 900, very cool. Deadpool 899 with Hercules, kind of interesting. The last two, pretty darn awful. So I will be dropping this book. In this issue, Deadpool teams up with, apparently there's two Ghost Riders now, so he teams up with both of them. And they show up in like 12 panels probably. In which case they're usually just arguing with Deadpool. And then it ends. The final battle is kind of cool between Deadpool and some demon guy, but the issue is just completely inconsequential, and I'm already reading two other Deadpool titles. Plus, there's plenty of other cool Deadpool stuff coming out, so I don't really need this issue or this book. So, bye. Sorry. Next up, on the scale of badness, we have Cable 22. I would almost drop this book, except from Marvel Previews. I know that there's only 2 more issues left, and I've come this far, so might as well pony up another $6 and get those last 2, I guess. So that's it for the books I didn't like. Next, we have a book I was kind of meh about. The Amazing Spider-Man presents Jackpot #1. Now, Jackpot was one of the first characters we met in the One More Day universe. Everyone thought she was Mary Jane. Well, not everyone, but she wasn't. She was nobody, really. And that character's dead now. So we have the new Jackpot, who's also the old Jackpot. Turns out she didn't want to be a superhero when she got her powers, so she trained with the Initiative and then sold that identity to someone else who did want to use it. And that person's now dead. So she's back as Jackpot now because she feels bad about the death that all happened in Spider-Man, and now you're caught up on the character. I actually kind of like this new costume. The old costume looked kind of like a St. Patrick's Day parade threw up on the character, which I don't really need to elaborate on that. But the new one looks kind of like a cross between Black Cat and Spider-Man's outfits. Otherwise, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I felt pretty much the same way about Secret Invasion Amazing Spider-Man, which also focused on Jackpot, although it was the old Jackpot. The middle Jackpot, really, because this is the old Jackpot and the new Jackpot. The middle Jackpot. It's just kind of mess so far. The stuff with Boomerang was kind of funny, but I'll pick up the next 2 issues. Hopefully it turns out pretty good. Costume's good. That's a start. And now, finally, onto the good books, because those are the ones I liked. Hence why I call them the good books, but let's just go. First good book, Spider-Man Noir, Eyes Without a Face, issue 2 of, I believe, 4. Once again, it's a variant edition, so it doesn't say how many issues it's out of. Can you read that? Yeah, it just says variant. But yes, I like these covers. I like both the variant and the regular covers. With the first series, I bought both, but there's no real reason for me to spend the money on that. Money that I don't have anyway. So I'm just going with the mostly black and white covers, but they're all cool. So no intended pun on the noirness of this issue, but this series, but I love how dark it is. I really do. Takes place in the 30s, and this issue talks a lot about racism, talks a lot about the rise of the Nazi Party in both Germany and the American branch, and that factors into Doc Ock in this version of the book, who still kind of cracks me up in a weird way. If you've seen him, you know what I'm talking about. So last issue we were introduced to the Crime Master, a new villain who's masked, and we know who he was. This issue he gets unmasked, and I still don't know who that is. So either the point was that he's a nobody, who's just being controlled by another villain, or I just missed something. But yeah, still cool character. And speaking of cool costumes today, I like the Jackpot one. The Spider-Man Noir costume, which I love. I mean, I've pointed that out before. It's really cool. There's an addition made to it at the beginning of this issue, and it doesn't last the whole thing. I think it was just a one-off. But when you add the... it's kind of blurry there. When you add the... instead of fedora, cowboy hat, I don't know. That's awesome. That costume just became even cooler. And I generally think cowboy hats look pretty darn dumb. But in this context... he looks awesome. Kind of like a Ghost Rider Spider-Man thing. I thought it was very cool. So definitely pick up this series and the one before it, just Spider-Man Noir, it was called. If you like alternate histories or alternate versions of the Marvel Universe, really cool stuff. I haven't really read any of the other Noir stuff, one issue of the X-Men, which I couldn't get into. But yeah, Spider-Man Noir, very, very cool. So I have one more book from this week to get to, and that's Siege #1. But before I get to that, the last Marvel book to come out last year, Origins of Siege, which came out on the quote-unquote skip week, so I didn't pick it up till now. Came out. It's only like an 8-page story, but I think it's free, so pick it up if you can. In this, you get a brief. I think it's like 8 pages or 10 pages or so. Story between Norman and Loki, where Loki explains basically Asgard and how that works in a nutshell, which was good for people like me who don't read Thor or particularly care about the character. I've heard the series has been great, but I've only got so much money. So it was a great time. Then you get the 8 first pages of Siege, which I'll get into in a minute, and then you get another 8 to 12 pages, I think, of 1 or 2 page spreads on a lot of the major players: Captain America, Thor, Loki, the Sentry, Norman Osborn, all that kind of stuff. So if you plan on reading Siege, definitely suggest picking this up. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's crap. It's got lots of good information in there. So finally, we have Siege #1. You have an event 7 years in the making, according to Marvel, and it's pretty good. So what's not so great about this issue? There are a few things, actually. First off, the first 8 pages. I've already read them like 6 times because they've been in the back of every other book out there. Kind of like a bunch of Hulk stuff was in there this week, which I didn't read because I don't care about the Hulk. Surprise. So it kind of got less story than I should have because I've already read those. Not that they were bad. Then there was a pretty major editorial error in the back of the book where one page, or the information on one page, all the dialogue was repeated from the page before it, so you missed part of a text-only thing. That was weird. And I kind of liked reading it too, so hopefully Marvel at some point could put up the missing page on their website or something so I can actually read it. But other than those 2 pretty minor things, I really liked that issue. A standout and my current wallpaper on my computer. This splash page, oh my gosh, with Ares on the jet, everybody else, that's very cool. The art in this issue, great. Coipel did a great job. Few panels where I would like a little bit more detail, but it does really look great. So you probably know the basic story, especially if you've seen the first 8 pages, which have been everywhere, but Norman decides to invade Asgard, and to set that off, he decides to make another Stanford-type incident that started off Civil War. So he has the UFOs attack Volstagg, I think it was, and Soldiers Field is blown up with the Giants and another team, I couldn't tell. Whatever. Bunch of people die. So Norman goes in to attack Asgard. The President is not happy about that, by the way. But and there are some of the Dark Avengers, which leads to very funny dialogue. But it's everyone versus the Asgardians at this point, and as much as I've said several times, I don't really care about Thor and the Asgardians, even I'm aware that that's pretty darn cool, and I can't wait to see where they go with it. From the reviews I've read, I know some people aren't too happy with the fact that this just goes right into the battle without a lot of build-up. They don't understand why Norman's attacking Asgard, aside from the fact that he's crazy and taking advice from Loki, which is a good sign of how crazy a person is if they're taking advice from the God of Mischief. But you kind of really need to read Siege of the Cabal. The origin short doesn't hurt as well from this one. And if you've been reading Dark Avengers and Avengers the Initiative, you'll kind of get a better idea of it. I don't read Mighty or New Avengers, so I don't know how much they play into it. Either way, Norman going to take down Asgard didn't really seem that out of character for me. I know some people had a problem with it, but for me, it's the kind of thing he'd do at the drop of a hat, because he's crazy. Overall, really good issue. Captain America shows up at the end. Spoilers. Not really, because I don't know if you happen to see the cover of the book. It was kind of expected. But I can't wait to see where Marvel takes this book, and we can get on with the heroic age and just put everything back to normal. So that's it for the comics of January 6th, 2010. First comics of the brand new year, and while there were some stinkers in general, we had some really good books as well. So I'll see you next week.